Hope that you are having a blessed Memorial Day. And today is Monday, May the 29th, 2023. And we honor today, today representing honoring those who have fallen in military. And that could be extended to those that have, fallen in any kind of line of duty. It says it was first proclaimed in 1868. That's what we've come to know as Memorial Day. It was originally created to honor those who died in the American Civil War. It was originally called Decoration Day. After World War I, the day was expanded to honor all Americans who died in all wars. And so, those who have given their lives, even if they're still physically alive, they have given a lot. So many of them have PTSD. There are so many who commit suicide and, that live with demons every day of what they went through in the war. And so we do thank and honor all of those, and even the family members, because the wives and the children and parents, they all are impacted by the same things, maybe in a different aspect of it, but they're still impacted by it. So if you have served, or if you have a family member who has served, then we pass our love and our gratitude and hold the space for total healing. And so we welcome you to the show. I still have a little sore throat, but I've got my voice back. And I'm not sure what Michael has planned for today, so I could pick up reading out of the Untethered Soul, and where we left off. I don't know if you remember, because we've had a couple days there in between where we weren't doing live shows, but we had talked about personifying the voice that's inside your head, and we asked the question, who are you? And you're not, the person who works at a specific job or whatever. And so to go on from that, you are in there having both inner and outer experiences, but who are you? To explore this more deeply, answer another question. Don't you have times when you're not having emotional experiences, and instead you just feel quiet inside, still in there, and you're just aware of peaceful quiet? Eventually you will begin to realize that the outside world and the flow of inner emotions come and go, but you, the one who experiences these things, remain consciously aware of whatever passes before you. And hold on, I just heard Michael say, okay, he dialed in. He had to dial in on a regular line there. Okay, and the first thing I thought of when I read that was during still point sessions. A lot of times, you'll have the whole Technicolor movie or sounds or colors or whatever, but then there's other times when you're doing the breathing that it's just peace. It's just total quiet, and you're just there. So where are you? Maybe we can find you in your thoughts. Rene Descartes, a great philosopher, I probably said that name wrong, once said, "I think, therefore I am." But is that really what's going on? The dictionary defines the verb to think as to form thoughts, to use the mind to consider ideas and make judgments. The question is, who is using the mind to form thoughts and then manipulate them into ideas and judgments? Does this experiencer of thoughts exist even when thoughts are not present? Unfortunately, you don't have to think about it. You are very aware of your presence of being, your sense of existence, without the help of your thoughts. When you go into deep meditation, for example, the thoughts stop. You know that they've stopped. You don't think it. You are simply aware that there are no thoughts. You come back and you say, wow, I went into this deep meditation, and for the first time my thoughts completely stopped. I was in a place of complete peace, harmony, and quiet. If you are in there experiencing the peace that occurs when your thoughts stop, then obviously your existence is not dependent upon the act of thinking. Thoughts can stop, and they can also get extremely noisy. Sometimes you have many more thoughts than other times. You may even tell someone, "My mind is driving me crazy. Ever since he said those things to me, I can't even sleep. My mind just won't shut up." Well, whose mind? Who's noticing these thoughts? Isn't it you? Don't you hear your thoughts inside? Aren't you aware of their existence? In fact, can't you get rid of them? If you start to have a thought you don't like, can't you try to make it go away? People struggle with thoughts all the time. Who is it that is aware of the thoughts? Who is it that struggles with them? Again, you have a subject-object relationship with your thoughts. You are the subject, and thoughts are just another object you can be aware of. You are not your thoughts. You are simply aware of your thoughts. Finally, you say, "Fine, I'm not anything in the outside world, and I'm not the emotions. These outer and inner objects come and go, and I experience them. Plus, I'm not the thoughts. They can be quiet or noisy, happy or sad. Thoughts are just something else I'm aware of. But who am I?" It starts to become a serious question. Who am I? Who is having all these physical, emotional, and mental experiences? So you contemplate this question a little deeper. This is done by letting go of the experiences and noticing who is left. You will begin to notice who is experiencing the experience. Eventually, you will get to a point within yourself where you realize that you, the experiencer, have a certain quality, and that quality is awareness, consciousness, an intuitive sense of existence. You know that you're in there. You don't have to think about it. You just know. You can think about it if you want to, but you will know that you're thinking about it. You exist regardless, thoughts or no thoughts. To make this more experiential, let's try a consciousness experiment. Notice that with a single glance at a room or out a window, you instantaneously see the full detail of everything that's in front of you. You are effortlessly aware of all the objects that are within the scope of your vision, both near and far. Without moving your head or eyes, you perceive all the intricate detail of what you immediately see. Look at all the colors, the variations of light, the grain of wood furniture, the architecture of buildings, the variations of bark and leaves on trees. Notice that you take all this in at once without having to think about it. No thoughts are necessary. You just see it. Now, try to use thoughts to isolate, label, describe all the intricate detail of what you see. How long would it take your mental voice to describe all that detail to you versus the instantaneous snapshot of consciousness just seeing? When you just look without creating thoughts, your consciousness is effortlessly aware of and fully comprehends all that it sees. Consciousness is the highest word you will ever utter. There is nothing higher or deeper than consciousness. Consciousness is pure awareness. Well, what is awareness? Well, let's try another experiment. Let's say you're in a room looking at a group of people and a piano. Now make believe that the piano ceases to exist in your world. Would you have a problem with that? You say, no, I don't think so. I'm not attached to the piano. Okay, then. Make believe the people in the room cease to exist. Are you still okay? Can you handle it? Can you say, sure, I like being alone? Now make believe your awareness doesn't exist. Just turn it off. How are you doing now? What would it be like if your awareness didn't exist? Pretty simple. You wouldn't be there. There would be no sense of, quote-unquote, me. There wouldn't be anyone in there to say, wow, I used to be in here and now I'm not. There would no longer be an awareness of being, and without awareness of being or consciousness, there's nothing. Are there objects? Who knows? If no one is aware of the objects, their existence or non-existence becomes completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter how many things are in front of you. If you turn off the consciousness, there's nothing. If you are conscious, however, there can be nothing in front of you, but you are fully aware that there is nothing. It's really not that complicated, and it's very enlightening. So now I ask you, who are you? And you answer, I am the one who sees. From back in here somewhere, I look out and I am aware of the events, the thoughts, and the emotions that pass before me. If you go very deep, that is where you live. You live in the seat of consciousness. A true spiritual being lives there, without effort and without intent. Just as you effortlessly look outside and see all that you see, you will eventually sit far enough back inside to see all your thoughts and emotions, as well as outer form. All of these objects are in front of you. The thoughts are closer in, the emotions are a little further away, and form is way out there. Behind it all, there you are. You go so deep that you realize that's where you've always been. At each stage of life, you have seen different thoughts, emotions, and objects pass before you, but you have always been the conscious receiver of all that was. Now you are in your center of consciousness. You are behind everything, just watching. That is your true home. Take everything else away, and you're still there, aware that everything is the center of awareness away, and there's nothing. That seat is the center, is the seat of self. From that seat, you are aware that there are thoughts, emotions, and a world coming in through your senses. But now you are aware that you're aware. That is the seat of the Buddhist self, or the Hindu Atman, and the Judeo-Christian soul. The great mystery begins once you take that seat deep within. And that's the end of the chapter, Who Are You? And it made me, I see Michael's hand up, so I'll turn on his microphone here in a second. But it made me think, we have a book of emotions, and we have the little emotion icons that Aria plays with, and the dolls. And then she has a poster that has all these emotions. And she does a gratitude book, and part of the gratitude book is recognizing your feelings and your emotions. And so she's getting the concepts of all of that, even at the age of 4. So I'm going to welcome Michael to the show.
Why don't you go ahead, Jeannie, and share the text that you got from Gabby before we move to the next set of thoughts.
Okay. Aria she likes to play doctor, and she's always, fixing her animals and fixing people, and so to fix them, something's got to be wrong. And we're attempting to work with her that, somebody can come to you just for a wellness checkup, or, just for some advice or something. They don't have to be hurt or have to be sick. And she was like, well, let's pretend I broke my arm. I said, well, cancel that thought. Funny, and it's like, when you say things with your words, you're telling the universe what to give you, and you don't want the universe to give you a broken arm. I know you're playing, but I said, let's cancel that thought. So now that was last Friday, not this past Friday, but the Friday before. We didn't have her at all this week because of me going through the healing crisis. But then I get this text. So she's home with her mom all day on Saturday, so it's been 8 days since we've had her. And Gabby sends me this text, and she says, Aria has said, quote, cancel that thought, unquote, about 200 times today, over everything. So, she's got it.
I am. And it's all about getting rid of the past and remembering. I want to bring a different aspect to this idea of remembrance, of Memorial Day, and recognize a different level as it relates to work. And just on what Jeannie just read, a couple things. He talks about seeing, but I invite you to question yourself, are you really seeing anything? My offering is, We say, I see the window out here, I see the door, I see the garden, I see the sink. And the truth is, I don't see anything with my eyes. The eye is a receiver of light. As a receiver, we call that an antenna. And you can't see out through the antenna. It's a one-way valve. Light energy comes in. Light energy resonates or causes thought to move through resonance. Thought moves. And we have this device called a mind that converts thought to pictures. So my offering is, rather than seeing what's out there, your brain replicates, according to your goals, what's resonated within you and massages it into looking like what's out there. But you're not looking at anything out there at all. What you're looking at is what your mind shows you. And this is especially important when it comes to interpersonal interactions and relationships. Because if my brain, which fires information and results in my mind showing me things, holds content resonated by what's going on out there energetically, but isn't actually out there. In fact, my brain will show me something that's inside of me, and because of my goals, reflect that as a picture of something that I think is outside of me. This is what happens when you go into a courtroom and you watch 6 different people testify about the accident, and no 2 of them have the same realities. Because no 2 of them, although they were at the same accident site, no 2 of them have the same pictures come to mind. No 2 of them, as a result of that accident, have the same content resonated. So each one has a different reality that their mind shows them. Remembering that, I offer this as part of Remembrance Day, Memorial Day, is that disturbance is a result of the act of the operation of the mind. All disturbance is a result of the operation of the mind. Remembrance Day, Jeannie had sent me a note. She'd done some research. It was first proclaimed in 1896. And what we now call Memorial Day was originally created to honor those who died in the American Civil War. Now, Civil War, of course, is an oxymoron. There is no such thing. It was originally called Decoration Day after World War I, and the day was extended to honor all Americans who died in all wars. Now, my offering is this focus on the dead, the dying, and death is all a focus on the past, and voids the very life of those who died by blocking our awareness of their existence through a focus in the past. You know, when Jeannie's dad passed away a few months ago, we got to see part of his leaving his body, and it was clear that he wasn't finished with his life. His body was finished, but he wasn't. We got to watch him go on. We got to see him. You know, here's a man who hadn't sat up, rolled over, gotten out of bed, stood up in well over a year, closer probably to a year and a half. I haven't sat and looked at the calendar, but probably a year and a half. And laying in his bed, being treated in a hospital, having gotten Jeannie's permission to leave his body, that it was time if it was time for him. An hour and a half after he got that permission from Jeannie, we were sitting in the room with him. He fortunately waited for us. A man who hadn't rolled over even in a year and a half sat bolt upright, eyes bulging out of his head, looking up to the left, took his last breath, and we got to see him enter a new level of his life. To focus on his past is to deny his aliveness today. We've been trained to focus on the dead and the dying, and that's part of what kills us. That's the energy, the focus. Yeshua says, let thine eye be single, your focus is singular, and thy body will be filled with light. If you talk to a physicist today, they'll tell you that matter is light energy solidified. So if I focus on death and dying, a single act, I is single, then I get to kill myself. And I get to kill the awareness of those who have left their bodies. And we have been taught that life is over and it's actually just a beginning. So memorialize that. Remember, not the death of those who've died, not the past, but space for you to develop the faculties to be aware of the eternal nature of being. The focus on the dead and the dying is as though they are no longer in existence. And we do that with little bits of mind energy that we call thought. And if we are awake and aware in this state of being that Michael's talking about in his book, then we realize that we are designed to be the source of the energy which we focus on and with which we create in our world. If we're not aware of that, then there's this one-way flow of bits of genetic information, maybe, according to our goals, maybe assembled from, 100 lifetimes of unresolved, and I'm talking about 100 generations of unresolved issues that produce these disturbing realities in our minds, these disturbing constructs, organized by the goals that we hold in the present moment. And so these seeming thoughts from the past produce this picture world that exists nowhere except in our minds. They are not part of the actuality of life. So these thoughts flowing from the past, as long as we think they're actually the present, are absolutely useless because they're nothing but remnants of bits of genetic information from the past, massaged by goals to look like coherent excuses for why our suffering is caused by somebody else. They mean nothing. The mind is designed to be an instrument of creation, but left to its own devices, it will only replicate the past. In order, and the goal of this work is to claim your place as a conscious creator. In order to truly claim your place as a conscious creator, there must be a stream of disciplined thoughts sourced from being, based in love, that are consciously flowed into your structure, into your world, through your structure. And that's assisted, the delivery of that energy is assisted by the breath. If a stream of thoughts comes from carbon-based memory, from the past, about sadness or grief or rage or somebody else's to blame, if you're a member of the one world universal religion of blame, then your mind, that is, and it really isn't a mind, it's really just the repository of data from the past, shoots up unresolved issue after unresolved issue, generation after generation, and living in that is called living in the desert. We're not designed to live in the desert, we're designed to live as conscious beings, and to discipline yourself, to apply forgiveness, to remove the stream of thought from the past, because once it's energized with pain, it will run on its own without interference forever. You can do the drama and trauma game, and if you were 2 and those thoughts were streaming forth, then the focus of your drama and trauma was big brother, big sister, and if you were 10, it was maybe that person you were attracted to, and if you were 16, it was maybe that person you were dating, and if you were 25, it was maybe that person you were married to. And the one world religion of blame, with its goals for others to be responsible, causes our database to produce realities, massages that data into a set of pictures that makes our fear and our hostility and our rage and our guilt and our grief and our pain and our drama and trauma everybody else's fault. This man Yeshua 2,000 years ago, to those who lived in that world, he said, let the dead bury the dead. Let the blind lead the blind. Be finished with the past. Because in the present is the life of every person you've ever known, whether they're in their bodies or not. Present is your life. And so it's about reversing the flow of information from what the world has trained us to do. The world's trained us to live in these bits of data stored in carbon-based memory that come forward and form the world we see that we think is actually out there. And that's where all disturbance comes from. Apply forgiveness to weaken and ultimately remove the trauma-based bits of energy. The trauma-based bits of energy that cause the alcoholic to drink and the drug addict to drug and the food addict to food and the sex addict to sex. In order to avoid dealing with that pain, let go of those things, face that pain head on, apply forgiveness to it and remove it, and now become the source of the stream of information that brings you into creatorship. And that if you have somewhere in your structure that's in pain, it's in trauma, that's in tension, then you feed a stream of actual thought. You source a stream of actual thought based in love to that part of your structure. And when the breath carries that thought based in love to that part of your structure heals. But it's hard to do if your mind's telling me about how Harry's the cause of your pain and Mary's the cause of your rage and the government's the cause of your sadness and somebody else is the cause of your rage and your guilt and your grief. A whole stream of thoughts, it creates a whole world that look like bodies that we populate our minds with, and we populate those because we have goals for the object of attention in our lives, and if there are unresolved energies within us, it's hard to become the source of the conscious stream of thought from the true mind. In the ancient teachings, it was called the mind of Christ. Nothing religious about it. The mind of love in you was called the mind of Christ. And what Yeshua was trying to get people to do was to function from that rather than function from carbon-based memory. That mind of carbon-based memory, if you remember, it had a number. What mitigates against the life of active love in you, which is brought into your structure through what was called the mind of Christ? Obviously, if we looked in that language and not implying religion, but just looking at the fact of it, the mind that goes against you living in the mind of love would be called, obviously, if the mind of love is the mind of Christ in you, then the mind that goes against it is the Antichrist. Physicist. Take a body, a human form, take it to the laboratory and tell us what chemicals it's made up. The primary atomic structure will be what we call carbon. The structure is primarily made of carbon. And if you look into the carbon atom, you'll find that the natural carbon atom has 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. That's where the past is stored, carbon-based memory. What is that number? 666, but the number of the Antichrist. Christ. The mind that holds unresolved pain and trauma from generations and generations and generations keeps us locked in the desert. Not a hot, sandy place that's 35 square miles in the Mideast, but the state of unconsciousness. And to get out of that into the space of conscious, active creation, which in those ancient teachings was called the Promised Land, you have to get out of the desert. What did they say had to happen to get out of the desert? If you go back and look at that story in the Old Testament. What had to happen? They said the old generation had to die off. That didn't mean everybody in old physical bodies had to physically die. The root of the word generation is genare. It means cause. Remember Memorial Day. Remember who you are and know that you can be at cause. And in a world where most people are controlled by nothing but the unresolved traumas and terrors and greeds of the past. 666, a product of carbon-based memory that produces massaged images of how everybody else is the problem in your life. And yet, if you'll stop for just 1 minute and notice, as you talk about your conclusion about others and how they're the problem in your life, and if only they were different, I could do better. Notice that every time you've been there, you're the one who was there. Oh, you had person 1, person 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 50, 100 maybe. And while your mind can generate pictures that point at everybody else and how they're the problem in your life, what you're telling me is you haven't yet awakened to the truth of who you are. And that you're relying on a mind that probably from about the age of 4 followed the religion of their parents, which is the one world religion of blame. Modeled by parents, everybody else is the problem. And when we wake up and stop the stream of what appear to be thoughts, but it's not really even thoughts. Again, it's just bits of data that, because we hold goals for the moment, are organized or massaged into a coherent picture that if our basic bottom line goal is to protect ourselves, has us sitting in the place of protecting ourselves from everyone else. But when we feel like we have to protect ourselves, we're attacking ourselves. And of course, when we attack ourselves, we communicate that to others, especially those we're most intimate with, and they tend to play out our attack. But we think it's their attack, not our invitation, our unresolved energies. And so applying the tool of forgiveness is how you remove from carbon-based memory the generational pattern that has you believe the belief that somebody else is the reason you haven't created what it is that you want to create. Memorial Day, I'd offer the most important function of Memorial Day: to remember, to reconnect with who you are as a human creator. And if you haven't created it, exit the one world religion of blame. Take responsibility. Forgive that part of you that is the block that you put into your brain's image of everybody else and think it's their problem. Come back to the truth of who you are as a creator. Stop making excuses for why you're not where you'd like to be. Stop pretending that it's every or anybody else's fault. Now, this idea of being a creator, everybody loves the idea of being a creator when the creation's going well. But when it's not going so well, because the one world religion of blame has been around from the very beginning, and by 4, the people around us have modeled living it, and we become, by 4, for the average person, a card-carrying member in the one world religion of blame. Oh, yes, it's their fault. When do I wake up and do the forgiveness work required to remove that lie from our minds and show up as creators, show up as the space that inspires all of life living to come forward and play in creatorship rather than the past playing out the drama and trauma and calling life to come forward and play out our drama and trauma with them. Yes, both directions. At what point do we give up the past? At what point the one world religion, the universal religion of blame? Where did that religion start? Well, one record we have of the ancient past goes into a thing called the Old Testament. And you'll remember, if you go back and do some reading in the early stages of that book, there was this guy named Adam, Adamos, which means red clay, carbon-based memory. And you remember that when there were troubles happening, Adamos Adam was already a member of the one world religion of blame. And he pointed his blame in two directions. When things weren't going his way, it was a conversation about the Creator. God, you gave me that woman. So now what we got? We got a dual-pronged blame. If it wasn't God, it was the woman. I'm just the innocent Adam who's been victimized here. When do we stop playing that game? When do we wake up to who we are as human creators? When do we realize there's only one problem in my life, and I'm it? And that there's only one solution, and I am that too. Those who live in a game of blame put a toxic energy into their systems that ultimately kills them. There is no other cause of death. There's a wonderful line in the Course in Miracles. I'm going to edit it slightly, but basically it says, swear to live eternally, you son or daughter of the Creator of love. It actually says, the regulatory speech isn't so great in that book sometimes. It says, swear never to die, you holy son of God. But swear to live eternally. Give up this belief that something outside of you is the problem, because that belief means you hold an energy within you that ultimately will kill you. Apply forgiveness there, remove that energy, and go on and be a conscious creator. We are in the Garden of Eden. That metaphor is the world of conscious co-creation. That's what we're designed for. We pooped in the garden and blamed somebody else. When did we grow up and become adults and take responsibility? That's what this work is about. That's what we're here for, to support that in our world. Remember, memorialize who you are by creating the highest and best visions that you're capable of. And if you knock your head against those visions and can't bring it to fruition, get the worksheets out and do the next level of your work. Stop making the excuse that somebody else is the problem. You are an eternal being. You're designed to be eternal. Death is a family tradition. You know, what's his name? Hank Williams had that song out there. Melody line goes something like, Hank, why do you drink? Hank, why do you blow smoke? Hank, why do you live out every song that you've wrote? What's Hank say in response? It's a family tradition. If we're trapped in the family traditions, we're trapped in the past. There is no future in the past. There is no life there. That's the world where the dead bury the dead and the blind lead the blind. Put your name in the song. Hank, why do you drink? Hank, why do you blow smoke? Why must you live out every song that you wrote? Go ahead, look at your family traditions. Notice, if you're a member of that one world religion to blame, you got somebody else to blame for the fact that you're living out the family tradition. Are you going to face it? Are you going to forgive it? Are you going to change it? Enter the world of a conscious co-creator, waking up to who you are, bringing all of the faculties of your being into carbon-based memory rather than buying the story that carbon-based memory has to offer you. That's what we're here to do. That's what this work is all about. So what do you think of that, Jeannie?
I agree. And I was just looking up, there was actually a movie that we saw one time, and I have yet to be able to find it. And it had to do with developing some kind of an app, too, that lit up, that the lights would light up all over the world. But it doesn't come to fruition until the mother's getting ready to pass. And she's looking at all of the lights by satellite. It's showing all the lights lighting up all over the world and how much one person's life can impact others. But in part of that movie, she's explaining to her children that she's not really going away, that she's just like walked into the other room. But I can't find that movie, but I did. There's a poem called Death is Nothing at All. It's by Henry Scott Holland. It says, nothing at all. It does not count. I've only slipped away into the next room. Nothing has happened. Everything remains exactly as it was. I am I, and you are you. And the old life that we lived so fondly together is untouched, unchanged. Whatever we were to each other, we still are. Call me by the old familiar name. Speak of me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes that we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without an effort, without the ghost of a shadow upon it. Life means all that it ever meant. It's the same as it ever was. There is absolute and unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of mind just because I'm out of sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well. Nothing is hurt. Nothing is lost. One brief moment, and all will be as it was before. How shall we laugh at the trouble of parting when we meet again?
Powerful. Powerful, especially when reinforced by the quote that you came up with, sweetie, shortly after we were with your dad and he passed. And you said, just like the scripture said, present with the Lord, absent from the body. We watched your dad move from his body, absent. It just laid back down, sacred, sweet, and he went to that space that was so amazing to him that his eyes just literally popped, and he sat up and was just 100% present. Powerful. Powerful. So, in remembrance, in memorial of the life of those who have touched us and perhaps gone on, yet we know are still alive, very much alive, My offering is what this day is about. The non-being mind turned to something about death, dying. Yeshua again said to those people, let the dead bury the dead, let the blind lead the blind. There's plenty of that drama and trauma to go around for everybody to play in that realm. But do you choose to do something different and step out of that realm and step into the truth of being? So that's what we're here to understand and accomplish. And we've got about 20 minutes left, dear heart. Do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
It is all quiet. I'm assuming that probably a lot of people have, Memorial Day, family gatherings or something.
So if there's anybody out there in listener land, do you have a thought for us? Question about the tools? Question about anything that we've said? How can we support you? What's on your mind? If you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. Call that number and you're listening to the show directly.
And we have a hand up.
Oh, great. Let's say hello.
I believe it's Susan, 610. You are on the air. Welcome.
Thank you. So I almost hesitated to call in because I'm going through a period of great questioning and adventure, and I've been doing wake-up sheets to stay above it, but I have never, and it's about my health. I'm not myself, and the wake-up sheet that I did this morning was basically I'm concerned and afraid and curious about suddenly not having good blood sugar, practically diabetic, having elevated blood pressure, and I've also been working on finishing all of my work and getting it tied up and ready to be archived in New York. And Michael is living with us, and he has taken over more and more jobs to the point where him and I were saying, hey, why do we go to a place to live when Michael's living with us? Let's ask him how he'd feel about being our nurse if we needed one, or taking over, just being here as a kind of support in the house.
Yeah.
And
reasonable.
And so he's doing that. He mowed the lawn today. He's watering all the plantings in front and back. He's tending my garden, which we're eating off of it. Wonderful, lots and lots of collards and arugula. We only planted 2 things, and we've got a ton of it. So we're making these smoothies and salads and things. But my experience of watching, I feel like an observer, and I loved what you read at the beginning, Jeannie. Who am I? Just pure consciousness. I remember asking that of a scientist friend of mine when I was probably 25 years old, saying, if you take everything away, what's left? Our awareness, our consciousness. And that seems to be, everybody has that. Here I am, 25 years old, and I'm talking to him. He said, that's it. He got all excited about it. And you're reading this again. It's so great to hear it. I have a lot of excitement and curiosity, but I feel like a brand new, weird, I shouldn't say confused, but I don't know what to make of all this. And my birthday is in 2 days, and I'm turning 79, and I know that has something to do with it, probably. But
Happy Eternal Day.
Right. The experiences I'm having of vision is different. I feel as if I'm walking. This is an exaggeration. There's no words for it. They call it brain fog. Even in the morning, I feel as if I'm peering out at the world, and I can see perfectly clearly, but it's different. And I'm asking myself all these physical questions. Is this what it's like to have higher blood pressure? Is this what it's like when you're almost diabetic? I want information. I can't seem to get all the information I need. And
Question.
I don't want to, what?
Question. When did this state that you're describing start?
It's hard to say. Remember the time sometime back I said I'm so tired, and we thought it was a healing crisis? And the doctor said I should go on a statin drug. And by the way, I just started it last night. I talked to my brother. My brother is 85 or 84. He's had 2 heart stents, excellent health in the way he feels and enjoys life, but he takes, what is it? I've written them down. Various. He takes about 7 drugs. Metformin, a valfapan, a lipo something or other, for all the things I've been telling you I have. And when my mother turned 80, she began having strokes, mini strokes, and she lived to 95, but she had many little strokes. And the doctor's saying, considering your history, I'd like to put you on this medication. And you know, I've been fighting that, and I said I'm going on a keto diet and I'm going to do fasting. I've done those for 3 weeks, and my blood sugar is higher and my blood pressure is a little higher, and I think this isn't working.
Cool.
So, what do you mean cool?
Are you sure it's not working? Maybe it's working perfectly. Remember,
toward shedding the body? Yeah, perhaps.
well, that might be one direction, or the other direction might be you've made a new level of commitment to life. If just before these so-called symptoms happened, you'd hit a new level of vitality, are you processing out what you need to let go of to step into the next level of aliveness? Remember, it isn't Dr. Feelgood. And remember that on a physical level, it's going to look like any kind of physical symptom you've ever had. On a mental level, it's going to look like any kind of negative thought you've ever had, and confusion. On an emotional level, it's going to look like any kind of negative feeling you've ever had, and depression. So if you're doing your work and you hit a new level of vitality, and when I heard you describe, for instance, how the weekend went, yes, there's still concerns with Jacob, but there's a new level of aliveness in that experience. I'm just asking you to consider, are you hitting the next level of vitality and the next layer of what you need to peel out to step up to the plate on the next level of aliveness?
Could be. I have no sense of that at this point. I'm just sitting here saying, holy mackerel. And it isn't like fear, because I really, really felt this wonderful shift in fear of death. In fact, I think to myself, oh, you know, I've done so much, and going over my work in my life, I know the others have mentioned their whole life work and stuff, but I'm amazed at the energy I had when I was younger, the amount of productions we put on, and the amount of pieces we did, and the huge rehearsals we ran, and the sets we made, and all of that stuff. And I look at it and I said, who did that? I have no interest in doing all that except to tie it up with a nice bow. And my church is taking my stuff, my scores and stuff, so if they ever wanted to use it, they would. And I'm loving this process of going through my whole life. But I also think to myself, if I have to go, that's fine with me. But right. I think I might be going. But that's what I think. I think I might be going.
So my offering would be, if you're going, we'll hold the space and rock it with you. And if you're preparing for the next phase of your life and the next level of your purpose, because you seem to be closing up a lot of what, finishing off, preserving what you've done in the past, I could see a space where you've been, seriously doing some deep work for several years now. And I could just as easily imagine a new place where, yes, your physiology is going to dip into the deepest traumas that it holds before the next level of aliveness can come to your physiology. The next level of youthing can come. So it could be either direction. It sounds like as long as you keep doing your work, it doesn't matter.
Well, that's good. Well,
I
anyway,
certainly hold a space that it's the moving forward to the next level of your life because we love to play with you.
Yeah.
79 since a kid when you realize we're designed to be eternal.
Well, I think about that a lot, Michael, and the 49-49 invitation. But I don't want to go that long in the state I'm in now. It would be too hard.
But as you do your work, you upgrade the whole structure. I look at, the first 25 years of my life, I was almost dead 4 or 5 times.
I know,
the doctor's office
tell
was
that.
my
So
home.
amazing.
The drugs, the hospital visits, I think so often about the suffering I put my parents through and the trauma I put them through.
Yeah.
And my level of vitality is beyond what I ever had in my life. I've been doing it a few decades.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful.
So keep clearing it out and open the space for embracing what's next. But I could see you being a therapist, moving to the next level of your teaching work and healing work with people. But you got to do your own piece first. And you've been doing it. You've been doing it very powerfully.
One thing I've been noticing. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. One thing you've been noticing?
I've never been a crier, and I've been crying a lot. I don't know about what. Everything strikes me as so gorgeous, so precious, so beautiful.
That's your higher faculties opening. That's your spiritual faculties opening. That's what life is. And it's the past that puts a tarnish on it. And you've been undoing and letting loose, forgiving the past.
It's funny
and
how
you've been seriously doing that for a long time now.
Yeah. Thanks to your tools. Yeah. Oh, it just is mind-blowing. Anyway.
Mind healing?
Yeah, I hope so. Too much of looking outside for answers, that's for sure. I want the doctor to say this, or I go online to find out why this is doing this or that or the other. And basically what you're saying is the information is all there. You've always said that.
On a scale of 1 to 10, if you go back, what is it, about 5 years ago you started listening to this show and doing this work?
More like 7 now. It's just amazing, yeah.
Okay. So if you go back 7 years ago, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you talk about vitality, back then, and you looked at the world, was it this bright, filled with beauty, awesome thing?
Well, that's funny to say, because in some ways I had a ton more energy back then, but I was terrified of many things. So I'm not terrified. I feel quite peaceful. I shouldn't say I'm not terrified, because you're going to correct that and say that was irresponsible speaking. I am peaceful, mostly peaceful, looking around, and just I feel like a whole new person, not acquainted with this person.
That's the idea.
Oh, boy.
My offering would be, you're making room in a carbon-based memory system that has been called the body to bring forward and incarnate as love, as the beauty that you're seeing in the world as being, rather than living out of a false traumatized self that lived in that terror and fear. And it takes a tremendous amount of energy to process that old stuff out.
Well, maybe that explains it, because there was an awful lot of sort of kinetic, nervous. I was always in a hurry, had to just hurry to get somewhere so I could be comfortable and safe. And that was driving me all my life, and I did a lot of great stuff using that energy. Now there's no desire to do all that. And it's so new, I just don't know what to make of it. That's all.
Can I offer a different interpretation?
Sure.
All that running I would offer was there was something inside of you chasing you, and you're trying to escape.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave up escaping, and you turned back and you faced it, and you've forgiven as to it, and now you get to incarnate in your form as the sweet presence of love that you are. And that's the beauty that you're seeing through. That's the filter you're seeing through, rather than the generational filter of all the trauma and drama and the riding crop that you had used on you so many times. There's nothing chasing you anymore because you've cleaned it out. And the cat sounds like she agrees.
The cat just jumped up and is joining us here. I know. This is my talkingest cat.
So the cat is probably jumping right in to process the next level of energy that you're moving. I think that's one of the reasons animals come into our lives, is to support processing. And I think you're reaching a new level. And, you know, the cat was pulled right in to go, hey, I'm here to support you.
Oh, he's a wonderful boy. Oh, well, it's wonderful to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, ask if he'll pardon me for calling him she.
Oh, that's all right. All cats are females until you know otherwise. They start out like all dogs are males until you know their gender. Don't you find that true?
Not sure, but...
Yes, I do.
Hey, Junie, thank you.
I always call Ryan and Gabby's cat a she, and it's a he, and their dogs are she's, and I call them he's. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, when we're walking, what kind of a breed is he, they'll say. And our grand dog is a lady dog. She's 11. And they all seem so embarrassed when I correct them, but it's not a matter of embarrassment. It's just the universal gender for cats, until knowing otherwise, to me, seems like a female. And, you know, otherwise, dogs are the opposite. I don't know why that is. But anyway, Jeannie, I wanted to say something I've always admired about you that I think of a lot these days. As I'm embarrassed myself, yesterday at church, we have a very Hispanic-speaking neighborhood, and our new young rector is bilingual, and I know we're going to cut off. We had a beautiful Pentecost service in two languages, which is appropriate for Pentecost, and various others of us spoke different languages during the first reading, but it was one of the most gorgeous things, and all I wanted to do was just howl with being moved by the whole thing. And of course I don't in church. I get out my hanky and I blow my nose a few times, but Jeannie, I've always admired you because you cry. You just plain old cry. And that is such a wonderful gift.
I have always, just shown my emotions. I cry if I'm happy or sad or afraid. Or
right.
It's just like, that's my outlet, I guess.
Well, it's a gorgeous thing to me, who never dared to. Now I seem to be doing quite a lot of it. But not
How many
for
times
sadness.
did you hear the line? How many times did you hear the line, like I did, if you don't stop that crying, I'll give you something to cry for?
Oh, yeah. And, my sister got whipped for crying.
Yeah.
And so I know where that came from. And there's a tremendous amount of shame associated with crying for myself. When I see other people cry, I say, way to go, keep doing that. That's wonderful.
Okay,
Yeah.
show's going to cut us off, so how about a mind shift?
Yeah.
You got your pen handy?
Yeah.
My power person
Mhm.
always embraced me fully
Mhm.
and approved of me,
Oh.
especially when I wore my pain on my sleeve.
I got it. Okay. So this is imagining a new mother.
Well, this is processing out the old carbon-based memory picture of mother,
Yeah.
power person,
Mhm.
and making
Mhm.
space for your actual mother to visit you.
That's gorgeous. I love that idea. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Joining you in that beauty.
Mm.
My mom's been gone about 5 or 6 years, and I chat with her all the time and visit with her all the time.
Mm.
So I hold a space for the sweetness that I get to experience there. And I, fortunately or unfortunately, the story that you're telling with your power person mom, mine was power person dad, but I always had that safe space with my mom. And
That's
so
good.
I still continue that relationship very consciously and purposely.
Wonderful. She must love it. Thank you
both
so
do.
much.
We both do. That's the sense of it. Joining you in that really sweet.
Thank you.
Happy Memorial Day.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.